This is Redwood Wonk. We are on our first attempt to do a Skype broadcast. Chuck Rogers is with me. My name is Eric Kirk. We're going to discuss the politics of the pandemic. And again, we never know where to start. Usually we start with the president. He's the one sort of in the foreground right now. We've got Dr. Fauci. What is his role in all this? How and what is the ex-vice president Biden? Where do we want to start?
Hi, Eric. I think for me, one of the big things right now is that an event of this consequence, of this magnitude, I think, should deserve a federally coordinated response, which we don't have right now. What's happening now is it's being left to 50 different governors to come up with their own plan for this. And I think that's a problem. For example, we have state governors bidding against each other and bidding against the federal government for the supplies they need. And that's part of the problem. So I think in retrospect, what should have happened, I think the Trump administration should have recognized early on, and there were plenty of signs that this was going to be a big deal. They should have recognized that early on and maybe appointed a czar for this or a special committee. And I know we have Pence and the task force, but what they've not done is administered a coordinated response to this. And I'm afraid that what's going to happen now is that you're going to have some states that moved early on, such as we did here in California, to impose shelter-in-place suggestions, other states that are just now getting to it. And I think we're going to see that's going to be a problem going forward. And I also worry about our healthcare workers not being able to get the protective supplies that they need. So I think there should have been a federally coordinated response, and unfortunately, we did not get that.
No, we got a really slow start too. I mean, South Korea, Japan, they seem to have gotten out in front of this. They did test, track, and treat. They were clusters, and they're already on the other side of this, and we're probably just getting started.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we're certainly just getting started in places like Florida. What is it, 26 million people in Florida, and they have just, what was it, yesterday or the day before, issued stay-at-home or shelter-in-place recommendations. So they're far behind in that, and there's some states that still haven't. So the other thing I think is that eventually, as the urban areas pass their peak of this, I think that what's going to happen is this coronavirus, COVID-19, is going to leak into some of the rural areas in the central part of the country. And my concern there is that there are communities in those parts of the country that have hospitals that are already understaffed and underfunded. And I'm concerned that they're going to get hit just as hard proportionately as the urban areas did. So I think that we're going to be dealing with this well through the summer as it moves from some of the urban areas into the rural areas.
To be afraid of that. Sorry. We're getting a little bit of interruption here, but no, you're right to be afraid, because the rural areas are actually right now the fastest growing places in terms of the expansion. The New York Times has a map. They've got two maps, one that looks at all of the outbreaks and where they are, but also which ones are expanding faster. And you'll see that there are places in Texas and throughout the Midwest where it's doubling every 3 days. Doubling every 5 or 7 days. We actually have flattened the curve a bit in California here, especially in the Bay Area. They've really done a good job. But there are other parts of the countries, and of course we have the governor of Georgia, who today, I don't believe him, but he just said this is the first time I've ever heard that you can spread the disease when you're asymptomatic. The governor of Florida was really slow to act. He allowed the spring break beach parties to happen. That led to a lot of infections, and then he is allowing large gatherings, and yet he's really fanatic about trying to keep these the passengers on the cruise ship out of Florida, right? And it's like, we know they're sick. Apparently now they're going to be transferred to hospitals, but on the one hand he's really loose, and then all of a sudden he becomes hard, when it comes to people who aren't Florida citizens. And it's just, he let the Florida citizens off and nobody else. It was just absolutely almost tribal, and something out of a bad dystopian science fiction movie.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the governor in Georgia, I believe his name is Kemp, Governor Kemp. There's no reason why somebody who was paying attention to this, as a governor should be, could have not known that asymptomatic people could not transmit this disease. That's information that's been in the public realm for quite a while now. So that's, looking for an excuse. That's a bad excuse.
Yeah, but he doesn't have any other explanation as to why he's waited until today. And Georgia is one of those states that's really being impacted hard now and will be hit.
Right.
It's so yeah, it is, and of course we had a real slow response federally, and when people are trying to get supplies, he's saying, well, we're not a mail order business, and then when they try to order supplies from the sources, he outbids them, the states, and we're not even sure how they're being used. I mean, he is delivering some of them to New York and New Jersey, but we don't know what's happening. He did issue an order, Defense Production Act order, to get I think producing ventilators, but I think they were probably going as fast as they could. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a complicated piece of machinery to produce anyway. And I think early on it was abundantly clear to anyone of sound mind that what Trump was saying in the beginning was just a lot of politics, and not recognizing this as the public health catastrophe that it was about to become. And that's tragic, because now we see, for example, in New York City, rows and rows of refrigerated truck trailers being used as makeshift morgues. And that's just a sad thing to see in what is supposed to be a first world country, and also a country that thinks of itself that as technologically advanced, and certainly in the field of medicine advanced far beyond most other countries. This is something that I think no one would have predicted. However, I think we also need to focus on the fact that one of the things that the administration did early on, before this pandemic, was to get rid of some of the parts of the National Security Council that the Obama administration had put in place during the Ebola outbreak that could have helped early on, had Trump not gotten rid of them as soon as he took office. So, I mean, we could go on and on and on this. It's just been a bungled response from Washington for sure. And we are left with mayors and governors to come up with ways to try to get just something as simple as a mask for healthcare workers. And that should not happen in this country.
And test kits. I mean, we really, in Humboldt County here, should be testing, people who are healthy to get a full sample.
Right.
Area, because they only have 400 or 500 test kits at any one time, for a population of 138,000.
That's right. The testing has been slow, which means that without the testing, it's just really a guess as to how many people are infected and how many are not, and where they are, and where we should be putting our healthcare workers, and what hospitals, what towns, what cities, what states, where the response should be right now. It's just a tragedy, and we're watching it unfold. I was going to say weekly, but daily, and maybe by the hour. That's how quickly it's spreading. I will go back to something you said a few minutes ago. I think we are benefiting from the early response, not only in the state of California, but also in the Bay Area. It's my view that the very quick response in the Bay Area, recall that among the urban areas, it was one of the first, if not the first, to suggest the stay-at-home, the shelter-in-place approach. And we see their numbers not climbing nearly as fast with regard to rate of increase as some of the other urban areas. And I think we may be benefiting from that, given the amount of contact that a lot of people around here have with the Bay Area, whether it's friends, family, or even doing business in that area. The travel back and forth between here and the Bay Area is significant. And I think we may be benefiting by the fact that they responded to this quickly, as they should have. So we should thank them for that. Of course, we don't know how all this is going to play out, but I have a feeling that we're going to look back and say that we're lucky that the Bay Area did what they did when they did it.
Yeah, and they actually did it before it was mandatory. I saw pictures of when it's just advisory of downtown. It was completely abandoned, and at any rate, they did a really good job with it. And yeah, we probably will benefit from it. And as of a few days ago, their emergency rooms are actually lighter than normal. Because of course, people aren't out, they're not getting into car accidents or dumbass fights or twisting their ankle, playing sports or anything. So they actually are lower, but that's starting to change.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that I continue to be concerned about, though, is not just the politics of the election, but also the mechanics of the upcoming election. If we still have places all over the country where we still can't have crowds of a certain size, we still have social distancing, we still have stay-at-home orders, what's going to happen on Tuesday, November the 3rd? I know that here in California, people can register to vote online, for example. You can vote by mail. There's also, I believe I read that the Secretary of State is contemplating early voting, substantially early, for those who don't vote by mail and those who don't want to show up on Tuesday, November the 3rd for fear of running into a crowd. So I think in California, we're thinking ahead already on this, but I worry about some of the other places that may not be seeing their peak of this until much closer to the election, and whether they're planning now for that. I hope they are, because this is something that could affect voter turnout. And as you and I have talked about many times before, the folks that we generally support depend heavily on voter turnout to be high. So we need to hope that all over the country there's going to be a mechanism to allow this election to come off the way it should.
Well, and of course, as we were passing the stimulus, the Democrats tried to get in money to encourage mail-in balloting, and all of a sudden you have all this worry about the security of it. And Trump, who is one of those politicians who says what he probably shouldn't say out loud, was on Fox and Friends saying, if we do that, the Republicans will never win an election again. You're not supposed to say that, but it's probably true. And so they're going to resist mail-in ballots. There's no reason to believe mail-in ballot is any less secure. Unless there's corruption at the post office.
Yeah. Another issue is the conventions, the two-party conventions that are going to be in July and August.
The Democrats just move theirs back a month, so they'll both be in August now.
Yeah, but is that still gonna work? I mean, we don't know. That's part of the point. We just don't know. And one of those conventions is scheduled to be in Milwaukee, which on some of the models, some of the maps project that the Milwaukee Madison area is going to peak much later than some of the other areas. So, what happens then? Well, what happens if we get to August and Milwaukee is just reaching its apex? What happens then? And that's just one issue. The other issue is that Joe Biden, the presumptive nominee, we don't know that for sure yet, but the presumptive nominee, Joe Biden, is having to campaign via Skype from his basement while the president gets a daily briefing in the Rose Garden. So, I don't know how that's going to play out, but we'll see.
His disapproval rating has not gone down. So he's won over some centrists, but he's still over 50% in disapproval. And even some people who are approving of his performance with the coronavirus, when they're asked, do you think we got a slow start? They're saying yes. And so they may be saying, yeah, it's okay now. Of course, everybody from Dr. Fauci to the governors know that if they want to get anything, they got to stroke his ego. I mean,
Yeah.
he's even said that. Don't return the call if they're not nice to us. He wants help from them to win the election. He wants them to give quotes that are going to help him win the election.
Well, and in a situation like this, that's just an inhumane attitude to take. So we'll go ahead.
No, I said no, and I hope people see through it. We'll see. It seems like they are. Biden is still ahead in all of the polls, and maybe Biden should just keep kind of a low profile right now. Just say things here and there, and then come on later as kind of the sheriff. And just take that approach, because there's not very much he can do right now. He attacked the governor of Florida, DeSantis, because that was easy, and he's making some comments there. And see, even Bernie has a little bit of a platform because he's in the Senate. When the Republicans, a group of them, discovered that some of the poorer people who are going to receive unemployment are going to be getting a few $100s more than they would have if it had been calculated right, they were freaking out. They were ready to put the skids on the thing. 3 Republicans, and Bernie got in and made a really great speech saying, "Oh, the universe will collapse because poor people get that." And so he threatened to do it if they got their way, so they backed off. And one of them, of course, was Graham. And but it shows you where it's at right now.
Yeah, and if any event could convince us that our tribalized politics is for real, it's something like this, where we can't get a unified response to it that doesn't spill into politics. If a public health emergency doesn't do it, then nothing will. And the reason that's on my mind is I've just been am almost finished with a terrific book that tries to analyze this us versus them and this one team against another politics that we have. And it's by Ezra Klein, and it's called Why We're Polarized. And I recommend it to everybody. It's really well done and well written and accessible. And it does make the point that our politics has become almost like a sports team rivalry, where it doesn't really matter about the facts or what's actually happening. It's all about getting a W for your team and giving an L or a loss to the other. And that's what's most important. And that's tragic, especially when you're dealing with a public health emergency like this. Now, as far as solutions, Klein makes the point that it's difficult to see what the solutions are, although, and maybe by the time I finish the book, I'll find some nuggets of solutions. But one thing I think he's driving at, and I'll find out as I finish it, is that the only way around this is to act locally and to make sure that we get the people we want in office at the town level, at the city level, at the county level, and at the state level. And that's how we try to rebuild the kind of coalition that we need to overtake what's going on the right now. So it's unfortunate that that's where we are, but it does seem to be that there's general agreement that that is where we are, and there's not much we can do about it except to focus locally and get the people in office we need.
I agree, and we definitely need to address how we're going to bring the country back together. And this is like an event that should have brought us back together, but it's still partisan. You know, from the right hoax. You know, because that's what Trump said early on, and they still think that this is all a plot, that it's being overblown. What I keep hearing, and I'm tired of having to address it, is, well, the flu is worse. It's killed more people. And it's like, no, it hasn't. Please read. You know, it really hasn't. It's not the same thing as the flu. It's much worse than the flu. And, you know, I hope that the social distancing and the measures we're taking do slow it down, but who knows how much. I mean, Trump is already saying, well, it'll be a win if only 100,000 people died. I think he's up to 200,000 now. As to what will, and grandpas, but even others, you know, and you know, so what can we do about it? We're right in the middle of an emergency, and yet we've got a president who gets mad when somebody throws him a softball question about what do you say to Americans who are scared, and he tears into the reporter. I don't know what he thought the reporter was asking, but that was his chance to be kind of like, well, we only have fear to fear itself, if he was that kind of president, but he's not. And everything is about points and scoring, and you know, they're accusing it on in, but people don't understand stimulus means you got to put money into projects that are going to generate jobs and keep jobs. They were trying to make it so that the money, you know, couldn't be used for stock. The corporate bailout money wasn't going to be used for stock buybacks or bonuses, and that they wouldn't be laying people off, as happened in 2009. The Democrats were actually trying to tell the Republicans, learn from our mistakes. We should have put strings on this money back then. And as I understand it, to be limited. Apparently, airlines can lay people off, take the money and lay people off.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's just so we've got this basket case situation, and so I guess maybe a question here, focus. I sort of brought it and I got sidetracked. What does Biden do right now? What does Bernie Sanders do right now? Now, Bernie, like I said, he's got a little bit of a forum being in the Senate, but he's also doing town halls online. But, you know, he hold back, or does he just kind of do a little bit of combination? I don't know. I think he's probably finding the best balance he can. But it's really hard, because anytime he says something, then Republicans attack him, saying he's desperate for relevance. That's their line right now.
Well, the problem right now is that what I worry about, anyway, let me put it that way, is that the Vice President Biden and Senator Sanders doing these virtual town halls. What I worry about, and maybe there are some statistics on this that I just haven't seen, but what I worry about most with those is that really only the choir is going to be tuned into those. The people who are already supportive are going to be even know about those maybe. And as we know, whoever the candidate is running against Trump is going to have to get more than just a Democratic base in order to win this. And I worry that those virtual town halls in an event like this, where everybody is so focused on their own friends and family and their jobs, maybe they've been furloughed, maybe they're not paying too much attention to those virtual town halls by Biden and Sanders. So I'm very concerned about that. because the longer this goes on, the fewer people in the general public, you and I are going to be aware of them or even paying attention at that point. As you and I have talked about before, as best we can tell from the statistics that are available, there may be only 12 to 15% of folks out there who are in the middle or undecided right now. And I'm not sure those are the folks who are going to be interested in tuning into an hour-long virtual town hall from Joe Biden's basement. He has to be out shaking hands and seeing people and going to rallies all over the country, especially not just in blue states. And he's not able to do that right now. And that's my big concern. So something you mentioned earlier, I think may be relevant here. And that is, you were asking, what does Biden do? What does Sanders do right now? It could be that this is one of those situations where you let the opponent defeat himself. Yeah. I don't really like that as a strategy, because in politics, I tend to like an approach that's more proactive and aggressive and putting your message out there. But it's difficult to do right now. So maybe this is one of those exceptions to the rule where you just have to hope that the other guy beats himself. And we'll see how that happens. It could happen as this infection moves out into some of those rural red states, and they see exactly how bad it is compared to what they were told early on. And maybe that shakes some of their trust in Donald Trump. I think we need to hope that they do get the information and all of the statistics that you and I have been aware of for a long time. And it's a tragedy that's about to happen if they don't become aware. But politically, this could be one of those situations where maybe Trump just beats himself on this in the polls and in the numbers eventually, as the response continues to be bungled day by day and week by week and month by month.
Well, there's I think there might be, what the Democrats ought to consider, particularly Biden, is maybe not making statements every day, maybe once a week, because then the media is more likely to pay attention. If you're putting stuff out every day and it doesn't have any to just go out there, he's going to bring Dr. Fauci, he's going to bring the other doctors out there, and people are going to want to have information. So maybe if he just occasionally chimes in and says, wouldn't it have been better if we had this? I mean, one of the things for me is the stimulus package, in terms of what it's going to poor people, is actually kind of pathetic. I mean, we have $1,200 per taxpayer, right? And I was talking to my cousin in Germany. She's an American citizen who was working there, and she and her husband are getting $5.10. So that's their stimulus. That's what they have to be able to shelter in place and not feel like it's going to ruin them. Whereas we got people here who are wondering, are they going to be evicted as soon as the non-eviction orders are lifted?
Yeah, and that $1,200 is not going to carry people through what I think the length of this crisis is going to be. And I really don't even like referring to this as a stimulus package, because this really isn't going to stimulate the economy. It may help people just maintain what they need to as far as groceries and paying a few bills goes for a month or maybe more. And that's going to be it. There's going to have to be more at some point. And I know they've talked about phase 2, 3, and 4 and so on. But we also have heard from Mitch McConnell recently that he may not want to go as far as phase 4 of this, whatever that was going to be to start with. But I think just today, in fact, here's a good example. Just today, the numbers for folks who applied for unemployment, new folks who have applied for unemployment this week, was over 6 million, added on to the 3 million from last week. So now we have something just above 10 million people in this country just over the last couple of weeks applying for unemployment help and unemployment insurance. I mean, that could send a signal to both parties in Washington and in all of the state legislative bodies that this is a crisis that's beyond anything that $1,200 per person is going to fix. This is not a stimulus. This is just maintaining folks with groceries for a week or two all over the country. There's going to have to be another 1,200 and maybe another 1,200, if not more, at some point, or a forgiving of student loans or something. Something's going to have to happen, or if it doesn't, we'll start to not refer to this so much as a recession, but a depression. Let's not forget that right after the 1918 flu pandemic, we did have the Roaring '20s, yes, but right after that was the Great Depression. So let's not forget that. These kinds of pandemics can wreak economic havoc that lasts a long time, and I hope that the folks in Congress are not just aware of that, but will do something about it.
A record. The Depression, it didn't all happen at once like that. It happened slowly, and because people were able to work, they were able to set up Works Progress Administration and create federal jobs, even temporarily. That was stimulus to get it moving. You had people making things, building things, and then we had them to last forever. We still enjoy some of the benefits of the Work Progress Administration and the civil service and all of that. We can't do that if we're stuck in our houses. So this is a real trick that so much money actually hadn't gone to bail out the airlines. Maybe we don't need that much travel. Maybe we don't need a cruise industry. It's horrifically destructive to the environment. One cruise ship is supposedly pollutes as much as half the cars in California or something like that. In the same time, the labor uses, they go off, so they don't even have workers' comp. Somebody gets injured, they're out of luck. They avoid taxes, and now they want to be part of the bailout, but they're not American companies. I mean, the owners and the stockholders are American, but they're based in Bahamas and places. We don't need the cruise ships anymore. Maybe people can go back to going to towns and paying local local hotels and buying local food and that would be permanently stimulative rather than these big ships where you're just sitting in a germ factory.
Yeah, you make some great points. Two things. One, this is a prime time for something like the WPA to be resurrected. As we already know, our infrastructure is falling apart, bridges, roads, and so on. There's so much work that could be done. That would be, this is exactly the kind of situation that something like that can be used for. As far as the cruise ships and the airlines and travel and all that makes me think about something I've been pondering recently, and that's what is this society in this country and globally going to look like on the other side of this event? I tend to think that it's pretty obvious that this event is going to be one of those time stamps in history. It's going to be a marker, like the economic collapse in '08 and like September 11th and so on. I mean, there've been many of them. We can. It's a long list, but I think this is going to be one of those. And I think now that people are having to pretty much restructure their personal and work lives, as we are right now, having to do this via Skype, some of this will have a profound effect on how we come back to work and what our society looks like on the other side of coronavirus. And I think nobody knows for sure exactly what's going to happen after this is over. But I think we will not just flip a switch and be back to normal. I think it's going to be gradual, and I think there are going to be all kinds of things that are different that we would not have expected prior to this. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think it's going to be a complete change, and I'll explain why that might actually benefit Biden in a minute. But I want to point out, you actually on our last show discussed a real dangerous element even before this came on that Trump might not let an election happen. He might say, oh, this is not proper, we're in an emergency situation, and he doesn't let an election happen. Now, constitutionally speaking, if an election doesn't happen by the time his and Pence's terms, of course, get reelected, she would become the president as Speaker of the House. That's on paper. But it's, we're already seeing, like Hungary has just become pretty much a banana republic overnight. They've suspended civil rights in a lot of respects, and Barr is asking for the right to like not have habeas corpus and suspend habeas corpus and for a number of things to be able to hold people indefinitely. So we do have to think about that, and then what's going to happen with that. But I could see Trump saying, "Well, there's something fishy off for a while until we know what's going on."
Yeah, I do worry about that a lot. I can imagine, and I'm sure you can too, some of the arguments that those in office right now in Washington might make in order to postpone the election. And of course, there would be an indefinite kind of postponement, and it just wouldn't happen. I do agree that there are contingencies for that, and you're absolutely right. But I just really don't trust this administration to follow the rules on anything. I can absolutely see them, and I hope this doesn't happen, but I can see them understanding this to be an opportunity that has been handed to them. I hope that doesn't happen, and I hope that folks like Chuck Schumer and some of the governors and Pelosi and Adam Schiff and all of the folks we know are thinking about this and talking privately about it and coming up with some sort of contingency in case this does present itself. I hope so. I don't know that they are, but I can imagine that those talks might be going on privately.
Yeah. Well, and that takes us to, I want to take it back to what might benefit Biden, and this is really dark, but Biden could benefit from the fact that of the primary demographics who are probably going to die. I mean, that's something, and I could see Trump using that as an excuse. 100,000, 200,000 people who are primarily, 90% 65 or above, or that's his primary demographic. Gets worried about that. What does he do now? What should Biden do, assuming none of this happens? Assuming that he doesn't get enough support, and I'm just going to say it outright. He doesn't get enough support in the military to be able to handle a coup, to the point where they would be willing to remove him from office physically, and they may very well be willing to do that. How does Biden win this election? And I think that we're going through a lot, and they're probably going to. I think in a way these daily briefings. People are going to associate him with their misery. I mean, after a while, I think, because he's not inspiring anybody. And he was given an opportunity to inspire, and he worse than bombed. He was nasty. And so if Biden comes in and then they start pulling Obama out to make sure that it'll be kind of a, let's get a little back to the old days. Remember how it was 4 years ago? And get back to some sense. Start saying, yes, we've gone through a rough time here, and we need to rebuild, and we need to sort of go back to the old, but make it better and stronger in a new way. Now, does Biden have that kind of vision? I don't know. And of course, there's a lot of talk about draft Cuomo and the rest, and. That's and of course Trump's going to say, well, more people died in your state, although who knows if that'll be true by the time it's over. But so it's going to be a nasty one. But I think that they're going to have to win by being Roosevelt. the happy days are here again if you vote for me, right? Maybe that was it was FDR's theme song at one point. I forget which election. So it's just, but that's somebody can, I think, could defeat Trump in a fair election by aspiring to hope. I mean, and that's what he needs to do. That was what Obama's theme before, and he needs to really get out there and plug for Biden or whoever the nominee is at that point. And it had a big job on his hands, but he'll be rebuilding after he's burying the bodies. But anyway, I mean that's my feeling is that's how Biden wins this. Kind of plays it back, plays it cool, and then comes in as the source of hope of bringing back to some semblance of normality with a stronger vision. But he's got to have a vision. He's got to do that, and I haven't really seen much by the way of his vision so far. He's comes across like a technocrat, and that's not going to win it.
I agree. The thing I worry about on that is that I think Joe Biden thinks inspirationally and aspirationally, but I'm not sure at this point that he has the kind of charismatic delivery that convinces people that he's the one to lead them. I do know that, however, just in the last couple of days, President Obama has announced that he's ready to get involved. I don't know exactly how that's going to unfold, but he does seem to be sending signals that he's ready to get involved in some way. That's only for the good. As far as Trump goes, missing his opportunities to be the charismatic, inspirational, Roosevelt type leader, that's just not who he is. Trump is more about self-promotion and then receiving praise for himself, rather than inspiring others to do as much as they possibly can. So I don't think we're going to hear any kind of inspiration nor any kind of aspirational message coming from Donald Trump. I think, though, that there are going to be a lot of folks on our side who are very motivated to vote against Donald Trump. So I wish that Joe Biden had the kind of energy and charisma on the stump that he could be that aspirational figure. I don't think he does, but I'm not sure that that would change much anyway, because I think that a lot of the votes in this election are baked in. And I think they might have been baked in the day Donald Trump came down that gold escalator. Just there are a lot of people who just realize, especially in a situation like we're in right now, that this is not the kind of leader you need for a country as complex and large as this one. And as far as the draft Cuomo goes, I would be all for it. I mean, he is coming across as the kind of leader that a country like this needs in a situation like this. Now, he said over and over that he would not accept any kind of draft movement, but who knows? I mean, we've never been in a situation like this, at least in modern times. So I don't know. I have been reading lately that Cuomo and Gretchen Whitmer and Gavin Newsom and some of the other folks around the country are already being talked about for 2024. But we have a long way to go until 2024, obviously. The more immediate problem right now is getting the Trump administration out of the Oval Office so they can try to put this country back together. So would I be agreeable to a Cuomo draft? Sure. If I thought that would work, yes, absolutely. I think he's more inspirational than Joe Biden is at this point. But we have what we have right now. And as far as we know, that's going to be a Biden candidacy. And until such time as that changes, we have to figure out the best way to move forward with that candidate. And we're really not going to be able to do a whole lot more differently than until we're past this COVID-19 event.
Yeah. Now, he doesn't inspire everybody, but he does inspire a lot of people, and there is Bernie Sanders, and the primaries are technically not over yet. So,
right.
It is possible that I'm kind of curious as to what he did with the stimulus package, if that's going to boost his numbers at all. We just don't know. It's untested. But he is inspirational. But will people? Does he have the odds are against him at this point? But it is possible he goes in and things are different and people are not thinking so much about Cuba and 50-year-old essays and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And he does give a good speech and he does inspire. So it is. I'm just saying that that's a possibility. The other thing that if people want to have hope, I think Trump made one of his biggest political errors by attacking the governor of Michigan. That's
Yeah.
his. That's how he won the election, was winning Michigan, right? Winning that type of thing, and to attack a popular governor, saying I think that was a strategic error.
Oh, I do too. I agree 100%. In fact, I think you're going to see that as a commercial because he referred to Governor Whitmer as that woman in Michigan
Yeah.
and instructed people that unless she's nice to them, don't send anything to Michigan. And, that's going to be a commercial. There are going to be all kinds of commercials, political ads, I should say, political ads that Trump just is handing to the Democrats, whoever the nominee is, on a daily basis. But to refer to a sitting governor in any state, let alone an important pivotal state as that woman in Michigan, is about as crass and dumb as and revealing of who Donald Trump is as anything he could say. And I think you're going to hear that replayed over and over and over, along with a lot of other things he said. And the dismissive nature he has toward certain reporters at those Rose Garden gatherings is also disturbing. And I think we're going to hear more and more about that. But again, until we get to the other side of this, there's not much Vice President Biden or Bernie Sanders can do except hold virtual town halls in their basements. And that's just not comparable to the platform that a sitting president has, especially in a situation like this. So I'm still worried about it. I'm still very worried about what's going to happen.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, we're told that the worst is yet to come. We could get up into the hundreds of thousands, and people are just going to be freaking out about that. They're going to be losing people. People are going to be grieving because they're going to lose people. I could lose my 80-year-old parents. I mean, it scares me every day. And every time they leave the house, I'm like, say, why'd you leave your house? I mean, it's just, and because that's who it's going to kill. I can get it. I may have even had it for all I know. I won't go into the details, but there was some symptoms in our house, mild compared to a lot of other people, but I and didn't know it, like about 25% of the people, possibly 30% of the people, and so a lot of us are going to survive, but but people who are a lot of people, everybody's going to be experiencing loss. You're going to know somebody who was affected by this if hundreds of thousands go, and certainly if it gets into the million figure. And
well, yeah, and
how's that going to affect the psyche? I don't know.
Well, that's the question, huh? And if we get to that 100,000 mark, and I believe the modeling shows it could go up as high as 240,000. If we do get to that point, imagine how many people would have been infected and had to have dealt with some sort of symptoms in order for us to get to a level of fatality in six figures. I mean, we're talking about millions of people having to have been infected by then. And then, of course, the numbers keep going up every day. We see that. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But once again, we come back to this is not the right administration to have in charge in an event like this. You need somebody who can put politics aside and put humanity in front and coordinate some sort of response to protect the health and well-being of the people of this country. That would be what a person who was involved in being the president of everybody would do. That would be the attitude at that point. But what we see is just the opposite happening. Now, yes, he has tried to strike a slightly different tone over the last few days. We'll see how long that lasts. I don't have much hope for that.
No, but, he's easily triggered.
Yeah, exactly. And he has such thin skin that if any of the governors or mayors go on TV or on Twitter or any social media and talk about their lack of equipment and their concern about healthcare workers, he sees that as an affront to him personally, and that's not leadership. Certainly not the kind of political leadership that you would hope that would be coming from the Oval Office. So again, maybe Trump defeats himself in this election. We can only hope, and we can only hope for a secure election, and we can only hope for mechanics in the election in all 50 states that lead to a secure election. And that's my hope right now is the election in November comes off as close to normal as possible in this situation.
Yeah, now, there is some hope. The coronavirus does tend to not like warmer weather. So there is some hope that it'll go into a little bit of a dormancy that takes us through the summer, but they're concerned that it could come back again in November, right? And even if it does that, and we're no matter how much they hype it, we're not going to have a vaccine by then. I know there's been some progress made, but you can't. And you're fighting. I mean, talking about the cure being worse than the disease, and so they've got to be careful, and they've got to go through. These protocols mean something, which means it'll probably be next year before we have it. Maybe late this year if they rush it, and I'd be worried if they did that.
Yeah, so. Well, I agree. There's not going to be a vaccine anytime soon. Hopefully, there might be a treatment before we get a vaccine. We'll see. But I would also refer you to. Maybe suggest to keep an eye on some statistics that are coming to us right now from the Southern Hemisphere, which, as we know, right now is moving into its fall and winter season. And they are seeing, in fact, an uptick of COVID-19 positive tests as they move closer to their winter, which suggests that you're absolutely right, that there could be a second wave of this as we move into our late fall and early winter season, which is exactly when the election is going to be. So I think I can only hope that the administration is keeping an eye on what's going on in the winter season in the Southern Hemisphere to get some sort of idea about how we should be prepared as we move into that season later on. But we don't know. Who knows? Maybe Dr. Fauci is watching it. We can only hope.
All right, well, we're getting to the end of our 55 minutes that we wanted to do on this. So this is a difficult one because we really don't know what's going to happen. But what are your predictions?
My prediction is that this is going to last longer than people think. I think that it is going to impact the election in some way that we can't quite see yet. I'm concerned about voter turnout. And my prediction is if the peak of this doesn't happen until maybe midsummer or later, it may affect voter turnout, which is going to be bad for our side. If it peaks a little bit earlier than that, then maybe a lot of people in the blue states would have gotten past it, and it would be in the rearview mirror far enough for them that we will have good turnout. But we'll see. But my prediction is that it will go on longer than we predict, and that it will have some, as of yet unknown, effect on the election. I also think that the longer this goes on, the more frustrated Trump is going to get, and the bigger the numbers get, the more angry he's going to get. And I think there is a possibility that he could just defeat himself in this election cycle. Again, that's hopeful. What about you?
I think I'm just going to predict that, I mean, this isn't a prediction, but again, I'm going to say that if the Democrats are going to win, it's got to be aspirational and hope. That's got to be their message. And they got to have something of substance. They got to talk about the New Deal, maybe move even away from the new Green Deal. It'll be green enough if they do it right. But they really need to talk about rebuilding. Let's get back to a sense of normality. This has not been a normal presidency. Somebody like this as president, and I'm going to bring back the hope that we had before. No, we weren't perfect, but we knew how to run a country, and we were statesmen, and that's what we'll be. I think that's the winning ticket. I don't think they have to cut into his game plan during that time. I don't think he even has to defeat himself. I just think people are going to have a real negative association with him, even if things go a little bit better. And I don't think they're going to go really well. I think we're in for a rough ride, and I think there'll be a very left.
Yeah, I agree, and we're. I mean, it's an understatement to say that we are in uncharted territory. There's a lot to learn as we move forward on this, and I hope that the people in Washington at least are paying attention. Let's just hope.
All right, Chuck. Well, thank you very much. This has been Redwood Wonk, and we will try this again. Maybe we'll get a little bit better feed. It's kind of hard to talk with the delays, but we will. I think it will get better. But anyways, Chuck, thank you very much, and I want to thank Matt Knight from Humboldt Access for inviting us to do this. Like to do it again. Like to do it in a live studio one day again, hopefully in a couple months.
Right, and take care of yourself and your family. All the best to you.
You too. Everybody else and everybody out there. Thank you very much.